since this show is called Facing the Future, and since it's housed at a WKXL radio in New Hampshire, I am going to start with Kyle Duffy, who is our intern at American University. I like to call him our chief intern because everybody's chief something here at the Concord Coalition. And just ask Kyle, not to put you on the spot, but speaking for America's youth, how we're trying to face the future, but what does the future think of us? I mean, how do people in your generation think about fiscal policy in the nation's future?
I think when you think about fiscal policy and the debt specifically, for a lot of America's youth, it feels so intangible as an issue. And I think that's why there's the generational gap. You all were able to see, when we had a budget surplus at one point, and that feels very realistic to you all. But for my generation, it's not really something that's ever happened. And it's so consistent that we have over the top deficit spending, and we don't really realize that there's options as a collective. So it's really interesting to look at, if we have that conversation, how do we get the youth involved, because it feels so unreal. So at the very least, we need to present options and an understanding of, okay, we actually do have choices to make solutions to the problem. And I think that's where a lot of the disconnect comes from. It feels like there is no solution because the problem isn't all that recognized, because we've never been familiar with it outside of what it currently exists as.
Well, that's somewhat hopeful that people would even be thinking about solutions, and in the sense that it's not so overwhelming that people think, we're screwed and there's nothing that can be done about it.
Certainly.
There was a question, though, Kyle, because it was raised by one of the people we talked to on Facing the Future, who interacts with a lot of young people, and he's saying that this generation has a concept of debt, a real concept of debt that maybe previous generations didn't, because of the student loan problem. Do you think that that's accurate, or do you find that with you and people in your generation that you're really conscious of debt because of student loan stuff?
I think we're very hyper aware about the consequences of the individual debt and a lot of the debt crisis that our generation has experienced through college debt. And I don't think that quite translates over to, whatever it may be in terms of the national debt. But I think that's one of the windows where we can take a look and get people involved on an issue like this, because at the very least, the justice that can be done to the issue is have a conversation and present people those solutions in a way that they might not have seen before. Because just like college debt, the national debt, they both feel very overwhelming in a way that our generation has felt a heavy burden of a lot. So like I said, it feels unrealistic to achieve some of those things, but there needs to be a conversation had about it at the very least.
One last question before we let you go on your Christmas break is we all look to the youth of America to help solve the deep divisions of partisanship and dysfunction that I'll speak for the baby boomers. I won't speak for the Gen Xers on the show, but God, we've sort of screwed up in some of these ways. And do you find that there's less intense instinctive partisanship among younger people?
I think there is more desire to find solutions, not across party lines, but just across ideological thought. I go to a very political school, and I think there is hope for engaging on certain issues. I think at the same time, there's polarization. I think there's more than there may have used to be on both ends. However, I think there is a possibility for that kind of compromise, because we've seen a lot of the consequences. Bob, like you said, there's been some screw ups in the past that have laid a heavy burden on us as a generation and the youth. And we're starting to see the serious consequences of those that are going to impact us and our future. So there's definitely a desire to find these solutions, because we feel like we're dug in deep already. So infighting doesn't do us a whole lot of good at this point, in my opinion.
Well, if you can speak for the youth of America, I'll speak for the baby boomers and say, I'm sorry. This isn't how I thought would be handing off.